Continuing on the player season review series today, going to go through some veteran bigs. Myles Turner season with the Pacers, Domantas Sabonis his half season with the Pacers, and Goga Bitadze's third season with the Pacers. Yes, he counts as a veteran big. We'll break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News, and today we are continuing to dive into the player season recap series. I've been very much enjoying these, and today we're going to do a very fun group. Myles Turner, Domantas Sabonis, and Goga Bitadze in a group that I'm calling veteran bigs. Obviously easy to say for Turner and Sabonis. For Goga, yeah, only 3 years, not really a vet. But second longest tenured Pacer, had to do some veteran things near the end of the season in terms of mentoring young players and being more of a presence, being with the franchise for a while. So he has been moved into this group both for ease of podcasting and for entertainment purposes. So we'll go in that order: Turner, Sabonis, and Goga today. And we'll start with Myles Turner. And he is such an interesting player to talk about his past season, to talk about his future with the franchise. We'll do a full segment on this on Friday, actually. But Mark Stein, previously from ESPN and the New York Times, reported that sources say the Pacers hope to keep Turner long term, right? So maybe they are long for a partnership. And Turner's kind of the litmus test for me on what direction the Pacers may think they're headed, because he's just young enough, despite kind of being above, barely, the Pacers' core age of their young guys. He's young enough that you could call him part of any rebuild, retool that they continue to do this summer. But he's also old enough and only has 1 year left on his deal that if they decide to go younger, he could be an important trade piece or a move piece. And so how they operate with Turner is kind of my gauge of where the Pacers feel like they may be headed. He's right in that sweet spot to me where he will be the guy that I use as my barometer of, okay, I have a better feeling now of what direction they're headed, which is fascinating. And this last season, the way he played under Carlisle is a reason for that. It's because he did, in fact, fit in pretty well with what Carlisle tried to do, despite not playing the way everybody thought. So looking back at Myles Turner's 2021-22 season, unfortunately, only 42 games, 2 straight seasons, missing a bunch of time at the end of the year with injuries. But things did go well for him when he did play, and I thought that it was noteworthy, that he upped his efficiency in 2-pointers. His defense was still awesome, and his finishing was great. And so when I look at the things that were good about Myles Turner's season, the first thing that stood out to me is how much better he was around the basket. In general, his finishing went way, way up from where it's ever been in his career before. He shot 79%. I'm going to talk about that number later. But 79% from 0 to 3 feet, far and away the best of his career. He got a few more counters and moves to use inside the basket around the rim. He shot above 50% from 3 to 10 feet, above 50% from 10 to 16 feet, above 50% on long twos. He found a groove inside the arc. The Pacers were able to get him good shots. So despite Rick Carlisle's, idea of using him more as a lob threat that never really came to fruition, if you'll recall from early in the season, that was an idea the Pacers had. Turner still found ways to be more effective inside the arc by increasing his efficiency basically everywhere. And some of that was the finishing getting better, and some of that was he got a little bit better as a self-creator. In fact, this season was the first time of his career that less than 70% of his 2-point shots were assisted, meaning he was able to put it on the floor or score off a putback or whatever. That kind of growth was kind of needed for him because he was very dependent on others' creation, especially for his threes in the past. And without a ton of post moves, it was really hard for him to be involved as a guy who could, put 2 dribbles together. This year, he got a lot better, especially at this. The shot fake 3, put it on the floor, go score, or doing something off the catch in pick and roll situations. Not just being so, naturally swing it to the other side, not being so repetitive. When he's confident and feeling himself, and we'll talk about the confidence role with Myles Turner again, he can really make smart decisions and make dynamic plays, and he showed that a lot this year. And the other good thing about Turner's season, every time you talk about Myles Turner and the Pacers, this comes up. His defense is just remarkable. I mean, it's kind of taken for granted how good he is at blocking shots, obviously. Like this year, 8.3% block rate, third best of his career, still above his career average. He's just an absolute mammoth in the block department. 118 in only 42 games is insane. The per 36 blocks, 3.4. That's higher than every season he's had in his career except for last year, right? Even the season he led the league in blocks, he did not. He had more blocks per minute this year than that year, right? So Fantastic shot blocker. Obviously, that's not all he can do on defense. Gets better mobility every single year. The Pacers defense, 4.5 points better per 100 possessions with him on the floor. Deters shots, great at drop coverage, keeps guys out of the paint, scares guys out of shots. You've heard it all a million times. And he does have warts on defense. He can't switch on everybody, and his rebounding is not the best. But his defensive impact is so strong that the Pacers continue to be a very good team with him on the floor. Almost an even net rating. Basically a 500 team with Myles Turner on the floor this season. And that's not a good bar, but given how the rest of the players who the rest of the players on the roster were and how the season went, that means they were much, much better when he played than when he didn't. His on-off differential this year was 5 points per 100 possessions, basically. That is a huge gap between the Pacers with Turner on the floor and with Turner off. The bad about Turner's season, same things as kind of always, unfortunately, for Turner. Consistency, rebounding, those kind of things have been the calling cards for Myles Turner's whole career. Like this year, it looked like for a minute the consistency was there, and I'm curious how much his foot injury, when it really started, derailed this, because from the start of the season through I don't know if there's a good date to pick here. I'll just say Christmas. From the start of the season through Christmas, Turner, 37% from deep, 53% in total from the field. His rebounding was up over 7.5, right? Like the shooting was there for basically the first 2 months of the season. It looked like he had kind of rounded a corner in terms of consistency. His confidence was there every night. And then for the rest of the season, from Christmas onward, right before the foot thing, really noticeably impact his effectiveness too. He ends up shooting 18.9% from three the rest of the way, 43% from the field, and the rebounds dropped by almost 2 per game. So that Christmas is an arbitrary cutoff, 100%. And he actually played very well in their game right after Christmas. So it's not like I'm picking this to prove a point. I'm just there was a point in the season where the consistency just went away, and if he had maintained what he had pre the injury kind of messing him up, and he's had consistency issues his whole career, then he would have had a darling 42 games where it looks like, wow, he really took a step forward. I think that kind of gets lost because of how poor that closing stretch for him was. But that's been a problem for him his whole career is, his confidence has kind of waxed and waned. And even this year to the point of, publicly saying like, hey, I want a different role. And he played fine in the expanded role he had, but he only had it for about 8 days, I would say. If you remember, that was like mid-December when all that was going on. And then, clearly the injury started to pop up and he started to lose some of that consistency, right? So that is something that's been a problem for him his whole career. When he is confident and feeling it, he jumps forward onto shots instead of landing in place. There's more oomph in general. He can put it on the floor more. He's not as robotic, right? All this stuff goes better for him and the Pacers. And then he has some game, and he's still good on defense. He's still engaged, but his confidence isn't there, and he's more, just pattern passing, and his screens aren't as strong, and he's not as muscular on the glass. His box outs are a little worse, right? You've all watched Myles Turner and understand it, but that kind of stuff still popped up this year, although to a lesser degree. So there is a good sign, I would say, if you're the Pacers, that, yeah, it wasn't as often waxing and waning as it has been in the past, but it still showed up. The oomph is a thing. That's just, it's not a word you can really quantify, but, everybody knows Myles Turner could use some more oomph, especially on the glass. Like, rebounding numbers don't do it justice for him necessarily because he does box out a lot and not get it. He does go for blocks sometimes to take him out of the play, and that still is deterring a shot. And the numbers were higher this year than in seasons past. Like 7 rebounds in under 30 minutes a game is one of his best rebounding seasons by the numbers ever. I'm not saying he had a good or bad rebounding year, but just his general oomph, I think, could be a little stronger. And if he plays more natural 5 next season with the Pacers, with Sabonis gone, he'll have more opportunities to show that. And the injuries, this is the biggest concern for me for Turner's season. Big guys with lots of injuries, always scary. 47 games in 2020-21, missed the last basically 2 months besides one Hawks game. 42 games this past season. He played in 62 out of 73 the year before, which is good. 74 the year before that. So it's hard to say with any certainty where his injury history could be headed, but 2 straight seasons of bad injuries is certainly concerning, and centers obviously have, you have to think of it differently with larger bodied players. So that is a concern, I think, and monitoring his injury situation this coming season. And he maybe could have returned at the end of last year. Carlisle was kind of describing that as like a maybe thing for a while, but there was no point. So he'll definitely be healthy by the start of next season, but how much that can play into him playing more than 40 something games is really important for him going forward, especially if he can up that consistency playing more 5 going forward. An area for growth for him, for Turner. And this year was weird because I expected this to happen. It never really did. More diving to the rim, especially off of screens, right? Variable offense. And with Sabonis on the team, it was really tough to get Turner to do it's tough to optimize Turner by having him be a dive guy or having him be a lob guy. I get why they didn't go to it very often. They haven't gone to it much at all. He's always been a pop guy, and Darren Collison was the best at getting him the ball off of those situations, but no one else has been great at little tight windowed passes to get him open threes. So because he can't really mix it up or wasn't asked to after screens rolling to the basket and things like that, it never really clicked in a way that you'd want it to. So that is something that I think Turner, if he got a little better at, even maybe some passing in those situations or just decision making, would really be able to help the Pacers going forward, and the Pacers in general making more of a point to get him the ball there. And it's tough because we didn't get a chance to see him play without Sabonis after the trade deadline to see if they were going to mix those things in or something like that. So we will see what's going to go on there. So what is Turner's future with the team? He is extension eligible starting on July 1st. I think that is a possibility. They could even do a renegotiation and extension, although that is extremely rare. So we'll see. I think, again, that he will kind of be my – and if he doesn't get extended, that doesn't mean he won't be with the Pacers for a long time. It could depend on how the next season goes. But his value will go down as the season goes on and he becomes a rental, even more so than he already would be at the trade deadline. So we'll learn a lot about how the Pacers feel about their upcoming season, I think, from Myles Turner. And I have said on previous podcasts that I think there is some smart logic to say a 1 or 2 year extension is smart, but Turner would have to agree to something like that. So there's a lot of discussion that would have to go on there. That's for a future podcast. But I think that there's a decent chance he could start the season with the team next year. But if he's moved, obviously he's been in trade rumors for years and years and years and years. We will see where that ends up landing for Myles Turner with this Pacers team. Let's go to Sabonis. I haven't talked about Sabonis in forever. I haven't talked about Turner and Sabonis in forever on the same podcast. Had to do it one last time. Before we do that, though, I need to talk about the good folks over at Built Bar. Summer is coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go, and Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. Throw them in your bags, in your kids' backpacks, in your pocket on your way to work. However you transport your food, they're perfect for it. So what are they? They are healthy, delicious protein bars, not like the rubbery, chalky ones you get in the store that have no flavor, not like the unhealthy ones that end up making you feel full way too quickly and don't make you feel good. They are the perfect protein bar for anyone, really. The fact that they're covered in chocolate, all the flavors are, means that they basically taste like a candy bar. The peanut butter brownie one is absolutely delicious, but they have a ton of flavors. You can get a mixed package with 12 different ones, including some of their puff variety with marshmallow infusion. They're all delicious. You got to try them yourself. Most of them, you can see the macros on the website, have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. Go to Built.com to try all your favorites. And if you use the promo code LOCKED15 when you check out, you'll get 15% off your order. That promo code, again, is LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, Locked On NBA is the way to go. Hear about the latest and greatest around the league as they break down the playoffs. And if you go to yesterday's show, I was on there talking about the Kings coaching search as well, as all those coaching searches heat up around the league. Let's talk about Sabonis. I have not talked about Domantas Sabonis since the trade deadline. What a strange season it was for him, because he was actually playing pretty well, but the Pacers had so many moving parts. And for a guy like that, who is such a good setup man when he knows how to read a guy, like his chemistry with McDermott and Holiday was unbelievable. And for a guy that requires at least a modicum of good shooting around him, the Pacers falling off there. His effectiveness should have been a little more limited than it was, and yet he was still brilliant for the Pacers this season. And it is a shame that it had to end the way it did, where they couldn't ever really go to battle in the postseason with a Turbonis group. I don't think anybody expected it to be awesome or anything like that. But the year they actually were both available in the playoffs, they didn't start together. Vic was hurt, and then Sabonis missed the playoffs, and then they missed it via the play-in. Like, it never got to be seen, even though it probably would have failed. And it's just a shame that era went the way it did, where those two did not fit very well. So what went well for Sabonis this season, his efficiency everywhere was a little bit better. And I think that was kind of key for him, because it's pretty obvious how good he is as a handoff guy, as a general setup man, as a post scorer, as a scorer in general. But this year, for the Pacers at least, ignoring his King stint, that doesn't really matter in this evaluation. His 3-point percentage was up. This is still in a good number, but he was 1% away from Myles Turner. 32.4, 2-point percentage, career high, at least when he was with the Pacers this season. 64% on twos. Did well at the free throw line, right? Rick Carlisle really encouraged him to take the right shots, and that went very well for him. 65% true shooting is absolutely ridiculous. He got his free throw rate up, so got to the line more when he was with the Pacers, took more threes any year he had, except for when he was a rookie with the Thunder, and they were basically telling him to stand behind the three-point line. So his general efficiency increased, which is good, because he's so good at bending defenses in other ways other than scoring. The fact that he was able to do that was really huge for the Pacers. His on-offs are just absolutely bananas as they are basically every year. The offense with him on the floor is just insane. The defense is what it is. But I had the page up with him and Turner. But the offense was so much better with him out there, and the defense even this year was a little bit better. It's just crazy how much he was able to help the Pacers be better. And they were, like with Turner, about 5 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor than off. So lots of good, obviously, from the two-time All-Star who was traded midseason. The bad about the season part, look, everybody knows everybody knows about this. The defense is just, and this is troubling to analyze for me, because I think he was okay at guarding centers. Obviously not awesome, and his work in coverage needs some work, and he got faster throughout his time with the Pacers. Like, he was slimmer almost every year, it felt like, at media day, but he just never could defend the role he was asked to defend, and it really did hurt the Pacers. Although, again, they had good on-offs with him defensively this season, but the defense was never there, was never really able to contain fours, and he had the strength to guard fives pretty well. But in the role he was in, his defense was not good. And it's hard, I can't say, that's it's fine that he was bad in this role because it was a bad role for him. Like, yeah, that's true. And I think that context is important when discussing his defense, but he also couldn't do what was always asked of him defensively, which is the Pacers put him in a tough spot, but it is what it is. It comes down to, and I think Nate Duncan was the first person I heard talk about this, but a lot of times with guys defensively, you can put them into one of three buckets. Can't do it, won't do it, or doesn't know how to do it. Doesn't know how is the best one because they can be taught. Can't is the next best one because then you can change the role. Won't is obviously the worst one. And Sabonis was probably a can't for most of the stuff that he would struggle with on defense, which is sort of on the team and obviously a hindrance of the player that they're unable to do something. But everybody knows about Sabonis' defense, who watched him for years with the Pacers. The shot thing is interesting because I did just talk about his three-pointer being a little better, and yet he took way more, right? He took 3.2 per game. That is basically what he took last year with the Pacers when he made 32%. Like, taking more threes is fine and dandy, but if it's going to be a below average rate of going in, like with Turner, he was, like I just talked about, 37% for 2 months. You encourage that guy to shoot. Sabonis's volume I always thought was a little suspicious, but it is what it is. They wanted to encourage guys who are out there to shoot, and same kind of deal. Same kind of deal with the defense, right? Carlisle said, "Hey, you're the four, you're guarding a four," and Sabonis deserves some criticism for not being able to defend those fours, but also the Pacers deserve some criticism for forcing him to do it. On the flip side, if they're encouraging him to shoot threes and he can't make it, some of the criticism is on the Pacers for continuing to put him in situations for threes. You get what I'm saying? But the three went in a lot, but I think he took too many. The shot diet was not perfect this year. Didn't shoot as much around the basket. His percentage of shots taken from 0 to 3 feet was lower than it was in 2019-20, the first year he was an All-Star, and it was up from last year. But his shot diet was a little bit interesting this year, especially as his long two faded away in terms of efficiency, something he was really good at early on with the Pacers. But it's hard to find a lot of bad stuff about his game offensively. It just really was the engine for a lot of stuff the Pacers did. Stat that tells it all: 5 triple doubles this season for Sabonis, and that doesn't sound like much because triple doubles are broken now post Westbrook era. Now that there's more heliocentrism with all these stars having the ball all the time, stats are up. But that 5 triple doubles is really impressive for a season. He's up to 12th in the league in career triple doubles at 19. Like, of every player in the league, he is 12th in career triple doubles because he can do a lot. Like, one of the best rebounders in basketball, one of the best screeners in basketball. That allows him to fill up 2 stats: the assists via the screens and handoffs, and the rebounding itself. The scoring is there as he got more polished around the basket, as he was able to finish a little better this year, right? A lot of stuff for him he's just really, really good at. And that is why he was able to fetch the Pacers Halliburton. That's why he's been a 2-time All-Star. That's why he has just been such a solid player his whole career. But 5 triple-doubles this year, very impressive, and not something he did with the Kings. I think that's pretty interesting as an evaluation point for me. 5 triple-doubles with the Pacers, 0 with the Kings this year, despite having pretty similar stats, almost identical between the two teams. He just was asked to do a little bit more with the Pacers, especially as they had guys in and out all year. And he was really talented for them this year, and it kind of tells everything about his season to me that he had 5 with the Pacers and none with the Kings because he was asked to do more for the Pacers, given that they had guys in and out, given that he needed to do so much for their offense to be capable with him out there. An area for growth for Sabonis, just talked about it in long detail, just getting a little better on defense. If he could be a little smarter positionally, he would need to be as fast. If he could get a little better at pick and roll coverages, that would help a lot because there's only so much bodily changes you can make. You can only be so fast at some point, right? So if you can get better at little things that can help you not need to be as fast or as strong, that could be helpful for him as his defense progresses. But his areas for growth will help the Kings, not the Pacers. And talking about a guy's future with the team is a little bit of a pointless activity because Sabonis is under contract with Sacramento, now with Indiana. So his future with the team is not something I want to talk about. But with guys who played for the Pacers and are now on a different team, what I like to talk about is what did I learn? What did I learn, and what can the Pacers learn from this guy's tenure? One is, look, the Cavs maybe buck this trend a little bit, but don't keep slamming your head against the wall with a pairing that doesn't work. And there were decent reasons, I suppose, to keep trying for a little bit. The first 2 or 3 seasons I got it, but after a while, it kind of became not a joke, but they really went too far, I think, with how long they tried Turner and Sabonis, and they tried to break it up with the Turner Hayward stuff. Like they tried to make moves. It's not like they just were like, yeah, this is the best we can do. But I think they went too long with it, even though they did end up getting good return in the end. That doesn't necessarily mean that the along the way part, like the Pacers missed the playoffs 2 seasons in a row. That's not something they like to do or something that they would have hoped happened. It just didn't work. That was part of this whole season. One of the big things for me, the cruxes of their season, what went wrong, is the players didn't fit, and that was a big part of it, was that pairing. But from Sabonis in particular, not that pairing, I kind of learned, and I think the Pacers did a little bit, how hard it is to be really good when your focal point is not an elite ball handler, and that's not like a surprise. Like star guards or star handlers really drive success and inflate wins in this league. And Sabonis can handle the ball. They tried to have him be a transition guy this year. I think Carlisle kind of wanted him to be more of a guard, but it didn't really work. And that kind of caps your ceiling to an extent. And not comparing him as has long been done. But let's talk about Jokic here a little bit, because Jokic is amazing. But he also requires stud scorers and guards like Jamal Murray and Michael Porter to make the Nuggets really good. They were pretty good. They made the playoffs. They took a game off Golden State. He had a wonderful series. He's amazing. He takes less threes than he used to in his career. He doesn't have this insane handle. He's got better handles than Domas, but he doesn't have this insane handle. So yes, he fills up the stats. He's maybe the best player in the league during the regular season. There's a cap on what that can be for your team, and they have similar defensive impacts, I would say. I think Jokic is a little better on that end. And so without the other pieces, and the Pacers did not have them, you need a lot of ball handling oomph or a lot of scoring oomph elsewhere to have a really good team around those guys. Like when they had Warren and Oladipo around Sabonis, the Pacers were much better. There's only so much you can do with your focal point when they can't really handle the ball or break down the defense with the speedy drive into the paint. So it was very fun covering Domantas Sabonis. I think a lot of people really liked and enjoyed watching him play in his unique style. And the very beginning of his era as a starter was one of the more fun seasons, I think, for the Pacers, because that was when their team totally changed. It was the Brogdon came in the door, Jeremy Lamb came in, TJ Warren was surging. That season they were the 4 seed that year. That looked like a year they kind of figured out what they wanted to do around Depot. Got derailed by injuries, and the Heat completely smoked him. But that was a really fun year to cover, and watching him grow in his first year with the Pacers in general, when they almost beat the Cavs, was also very fun. And I wish him nothing but the best in Sacramento. One more guy today. Goga Bitadze had his season go with the Pacers this year. Let's talk about it. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, I'm going to suggest Locked On Kings, since I just talked about Sabonis, but also hear more about their coaching search. Mark Jackson, Steve Clifford, Mike Brown in the fold. Some Pacers connections in there with Mark Jackson and Mike Brown. Matt George will have all the details for you on Locked On Kings. Let's talk about Goga Bitadze's season. Yes, he counts as a veteran big because he's been with the Pacers for 3 seasons now, making him one of the longest tenured members with this team. It's almost hard to believe that, but the only guy with more Pacers experience when the season ended than Goga, consecutively at least, is Turner, right? Lance in total does. They picked up Malcolm Brogdon like 9 days after they drafted Goga. Like, it's not a perfect science. Same with TJ Warren. It was a draft night trade there. But Goga is really the second longest tenured Pacer, and because Warren and Brogdon weren't playing a lot down the stretch, very often was the veteran most Pacer playing in games. So he gets it to be in this group for this exercise, despite only being a third-year player. A very interesting season for Goga Bitadze. If you made me do the season evaluation for Goga during the All-Star break, this would not have been as rosy of a segment. But the good about Goga's season to me was that really strong, well-rounded close. And that's not like a specific thing, so maybe that's kind of a cop-out way of calling a guy's season well. But the first game after the All-Star break, Goga plays a minute 28. Not going to count that one. Then he's back in the rotation. They realize, okay, we should be playing this guy, more than we are. not burying him on the bench. Like, he's our third year big. This is our chance to finally really evaluate him. So for every game after that, the last 14 appearances for Goga of the season, 61.7% shooting from the field, 45.5% from deep, 78.9% from the free throw line, 12.6 points, 5.4 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.3 blocks. He was good. He was like a solid rotation. This is a low bar, but a solid rotation level center. Like that is the value you expect about from the 18th pick, is like a quality rotation level guy that you can use as a starter, plug in as a backup, whatever, if you need him. Goga was finally that, and that is, good about the season. Usually, I like to pick one specific skill, one specific stat, something like that. And there are things you could pull for Goga, specifically defensively. But the fact that he was able to kind of put it all together, right, was really important to me, because he's had some solid offensive and rebounding games, like double doubles in the past. His defensive instincts are there, but he never really put it all together in the way that he really did at the end of this season, despite playing with new players, which is something that, for a guy like the way he plays, was really something he needed, was reps with new players. And once he got him, he clearly showed what he can do with this team. And it was huge for him. Like, his NBA career had not gone particularly well, but now he has a solid stretch of play to both build off of and have a baseline of success for. And look, it might mean nothing in the grand scheme of his career, but like, think about Jalen Smith, who just had an awesome time with the Pacers. And for the Suns, he could barely get on the court, but he had this one stretch where he finally got big minutes and big opportunity when Ayton was out and when JaVale McGee was out, and they had some COVID absences, and he looked great. That was the most minutes he could get, and he finally was able to put some stuff together. Like, that level of baseline ended up translating when Jalen Smith got big minutes somewhere else. Maybe Goga gets big minutes with the Pacers, maybe not. We'll talk about that at the end here. But the fact that he has this baseline of showing, like, hey, look what I can do if I get consistent minutes and can play every game with a team I understand and am gaining chemistry with, that's really big for his future and his growth. Things that were not so good about Goga's season, despite shooting 45% from three over the last 15 appearances for him, he still finished at 28.8% from deep. And as a guy who came into the draft looking like he could be a good shooting big, that is not what you want. 80 attempts from three. His whole career, only 201 attempts. That's about half of what you need to kind of get a stable reading on what a guy's three-point shot is. He's only hit a quarter of those, right? Like, not a good three-point shooter. He's done it in the G League. He did it in Europe. It looked like something he'd be good at. Has not been there yet. So he's kind of been forced to be more ground-bound and interior on offense than what was expected coming out of that draft. And I think he showed it at the end of the season, like I just talked about. He showed it in the G League, and the G League means a little to some listeners. I understand that. But with guys like Edmund Sumner, who work on their three in the G League for forever, it finally clicks one day, and he shoots 40% for a season. Same with O'Shea Brissett. Like, it matters. Eventually, that kind of shows to me that they can, if they get the right reps, put the ball in the basket. I think Goga will be a better shooter than that, but this past season, he was not a good shooter. His speed is another issue for him. He can read the game pretty well, but if he's even half a step out of position, he's toast, because he's not quick enough to get back into the play or recover from a mistake. So, like, if he messes up and tries to correct it mid-play, he's toast. He's not quick enough to do it. And even though he reads the game really well, I actually think Goga's ability to read the game is really high. If he's a step slow, it doesn't matter that he can read the game well. He's out of position at that point, no matter what. So he gets close to a lot of shots, but not all the way there. And that's kind of why he's such a foul guy. Like, per 36 minutes, still every season of his career, over 5 fouls per 36, because he's like late to a lot of stuff. And that is not because he's late to the read anymore. It was his rookie year, but now he's got the read. He's just too slow to get there in time. Maybe that means he needs to be a half step closer. Maybe that means he needs to, be able to read the game faster to keep up with foot speed. But his lack of speed really hurt him, and especially as the Pacers right after the trade deadline, before the All-Star break, Goga had a really rough stretch of games that were not great for him. It's not less than 10 minutes against the Cavs, looked really awful. Another Cavs game at 16 minutes did not look good. Minnesota, Milwaukee in there, like decent putting the ball in the basket kind of nights, but not just good performances in general. And then right after the break, his first couple of games were not amazing either. But once he figured out the speed of the team, it was fine. But at first, remember, it looked like the Pacers were going to be way too fast for him with Halliburton and co. in hand. But he figured that out. So I think he can figure out how to keep up once he reads how to do this stuff. He's just got to have more reps at that. Turnover is another problem for him this past season. His turnover rate's pretty high for a guy who doesn't have the ball that much. He coughed it up 46 times this season. That's a lot for a guy who played 730 minutes. His turnover rate 13.6% is pretty high, especially after fixing that a little bit last year. Once he got more pressured as the season went on, that's something that went away for him. One stat that tells it all for Mr. Bitadze. I think he's a much better rim deterrent than he gets credit for. But the step slow thing really comes into play here. With Goga on the floor, the Pacers' offense was really good, 116.8 offensive rating Goga in, but their defensive rating was not. 119.6 with him on. That's actually worse than when he's off the floor, which suggests a negative impact on defense. And a lot of that is opponent 2-point percentage goes way up with him in the game because even though the blocks are there when he's in the right position, he is a step slow on stopping some rotations and some backside help in a way that allows their team to finish some very easy shots with little deterrence around the basket. And that's got to be better if he wants to be a really consistent rotation guy. He found a way to be impactful in every area of the game down the stretch of the season, but he's still got to be a little quicker or got to be, like Sabonis, who got slimmer every year. I think Goga getting a little slimmer would actually help him quite a bit on the defensive end of the floor, be able to get to some of that stuff a little quicker and more reps and more practice. He's playing for his national team in Georgia this summer. More reps and practice will certainly help him in that way. So that's a big thing for him to me, is getting that going. Another areas for growth for him, the threes. If he can finally hit him in the NBA, he'll be a rotation big on any team at any time. If you can shoot threes as a big man, and getting faster, obviously huge for him. So what's Goga's future with the team? This one is tough. And I will do an extensions podcast after free agency, so I don't talk about someone who's not going to be on the team and waste my time. But Goga is extension eligible, coming off of his third year of his rookie deal. He can get a rookie extension. There's basically no way to me that one gets done because he hasn't really established enough value for him to want to go pursue a deal like that. And the Pacers haven't seen enough to want to give him big money or anything. So low chance it happens unless both sides are like, yeah, $20 million over a few years is fine. So he is extension eligible. I really doubt he gets one, but I'll be curious. He not in the same way as Turner, but I think we'll learn how the Pacers kind of feel about Isaiah Jackson with Goga in the fold. That's a little over the top of what I mean, but keeping Goga going into next season, I think Isaiah Jackson's ceiling much higher than Goga's. I would rather play Isaiah Jackson than Goga, but if you keep both and Turner, you have to kind of play Isaiah at the 4 because if they go into year 4 of Goga with him on the team and not playing at all, that's just a waste of a roster spot. And so if they trade him, then they have ways to play Isaiah. But if they keep Goga, they have to find a way for him to play that might require moving other bigs or just very much committing to him as the backup big. So if Goga's future with the Pacers is with the Pacers, that was a stupid thing to say, but if his future does involve him being with the Pacers, they have to make some sort of commitment to him. Whether that commitment is, we got rid of Myles Turner's not on the team anymore, right? You have more opportunity to play, or you are our backup center. Isaiah Jackson will play next to you. Maybe that doesn't work, but you are our backup center. If they don't make that commitment, keeping him around doesn't make much sense to me on a last year of his rookie deal. So we'll see what his future holds with this team. I don't think it's crazy to have him back next year as a backup big, but I wouldn't start him over Isaiah Jackson or Myles Turner. So his role next season will be fascinating to see, and what moves the Pacers make on the interior will certainly have a bearing on his future with the team. And as of right now, I think I would just hang on, see what comes up around the draft, and maybe try to use him like Aaron Holiday as a piece that can help you move up from pick 31 that they have from Houston. Or if they don't want to trade him and they actually want to keep him as the backup big, then great. They know he can be solid and they can monitor how he plays overseas. So that's the Veteran Big Season Review podcast. The next one we'll do is an interesting one because I wanted to do a segment about this Turner thing I talked about at the beginning that Mark Stein reported for a while. It's hard to fit it in my offseason schedule. So what we'll do Friday, probably, maybe tomorrow, depending on how scheduling goes, is I'll do a segment on Myles Turner that Mark Stein reported about the Pacers potentially wanting to keep him around. And then we'll do the randoms season review, which is all the guys who played less than 5 games. Nate Hinton, Tristan Thompson, Gabe York, Reggie Perry, DeJon Jarreau, Ahmad Kaver. Not guys anybody wants to hear about necessarily, but I got to cover everybody, so we'll make that one Turner heavy show with some other guys mixed in. And then I'm trying to do a Shade and Sharp prospect review podcast later this week as well with someone who has way more insight on him than I ever could have without having any tape. So you'll want to stick around for that. Thank you guys a ton for listening. Hope you had a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.